I have been retired for 2 years, but I still come to Platform 4 every morning at 7:15. Old habit, my son Owen says, and he's not wrong. 2 years I maintained this stretch of the Millhaven commuter line. The ties, the signals, the little brick shelter with its 2 green benches. And when they handed me the watch and the handshake, I found I didn't know what to do with a morning that had no platform in it. So I kept coming. I bring a thermos of coffee, 2 cups, 'cause my late wife Ruth always said a thermos with only 1 cup was a lonely thing, and I never quite argued her out of it. The dog showed up on a Tuesday in October the year after I retired. He came out of the tree line beyond the far track, big, golden, with a slow, deliberate way of moving, like a man who has decided there is no point in rushing. He sat at the edge of the platform and watched the 722 pull in, watched it pull out, and then he looked at me. I didn't have anything to give him that first morning except half a biscuit from my jacket pocket. He took it gently, which told me something about him right away. I named him Porter, because it seemed right for a station dog. I started bringing a second biscuit, then a small bag of dry food in my jacket. By November he was sitting on the bench beside me, his shoulder warm against my arm, watching the trains come and go, with what I can only describe as a professional interest. Owen said I was turning into an eccentric. I told him there were worse things. That was when I first noticed her. She came through on the 7:2 every weekday, tall, dark coat, a leather case over one shoulder, always moving as though she were already late for wherever she was going even before the train arrived. The kind of motion that doesn't stop. I recognized it because Ruth used to say that busyness was how some people kept sadness from catching up with them. I don't know what made me think of that the first time I saw this woman, but I did. She never looked at Porter those first weeks. She looked at her phone, at the track, at the time. She was courteous. She'd give a small nod if our eyes met. But she was somewhere else entirely. A person in transit, and not just between stations. Then one morning in December she slowed down. Just a step, just a fraction. Porter had lifted his head and was watching the platform, the way he always did, when a train was coming, and she glanced at him the way you glance at something that doesn't fit. A quiet, golden thing sitting still in all the commuter noise. She caught herself looking. Then she straightened her coat and boarded the train. But the next morning she slowed again. And the morning after that, by mid-December she was stopping for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, watching Porter sit and watch the trains. She never spoke to me. She wasn't there yet. I poured my second cup of coffee and didn't make a fuss of it. Porter didn't make a fuss either. He was good at that. At letting a person come to stillness in their own time. It was a Thursday in January, bitter cold, when she missed her train. I heard the 722 pull and looked over. She was still on the platform, standing with her case in her hand, watching the last car go. I couldn't tell if it was an accident decision. She stood there a moment. Then she walked over and sat down on the far end of my bench, leaving a polite distance between us. Porter looked at her. She looked at Porter. "Does he belong to you?" she said. "He belongs to himself," I said. "He just chooses to be here." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, almost to herself, "I used to think I understood that. Choosing where to be. Didn't push it." I poured the second cup. I always had it, and set it on the bench between us without saying anything. She looked at it, then looked at me, and then she picked it up. Her name was Claire. She ran a regional logistics company. 3 offices, 60-some employees. She had built most of it in the last 3 years, she said, after her husband Martin died. A heart attack, sudden, no warning. The kind of loss that doesn't give you time to brace. She had thrown herself into work because work was the one place where she knew the rules. Effort produced a legible result. At home there were no legible results. There was just the silence. "I noticed you," she said, "every morning. You and the dog. You never seem to be in a hurry." "I've got nowhere I have to be," I said. "I have somewhere I have to be every minute of every day," she said. And her voice had no pride in it, just exhaustion. Porter stood up then, walked the length of the bench, and laid his head in her lap the way he sometimes laid it in mine, a slow, deliberate weight. She went very still. Her hand came down on his head without thinking, the way a hand will find a familiar thing in the dark. We sat like that for a while. The 7:47 came and went. I told her about Ruth then, 31 years married, a school librarian, A laugh you could hear from the next room. Gone 4 years ago. A long illness that we walked together until the end. I told her how I kept coming to the platform, not because I was stuck, because Ruth always said, the best cure for grief was to keep showing up to the things that mattered. The platform had mattered. The coffee had mattered. And then Porter came along, and I mattered too. He waits, Claire said quietly. She was still looking at the dog. He does, I said. Every morning, every evening. I don't think he's waiting for a train. She looked up at me then, and I saw something shift in her face. A small, careful thing, like a door opening inward rather than out. What's he waiting for? She said. I thought about it, honestly. I think he's waiting to see what today brings, I said. That's all. Not yesterday. Not the whole future. Just today. She was quiet for a long time after that. The cold had eased a little, the way it sometimes does mid-morning in January, when the sun clears the tree line. Porter lifted his head from her lap, yawned hugely, and then put it back. She laughed. It came out of her surprised and soft. And I could tell it was the first one in a while that hadn't been the professional kind. She made the 8:12. After that, she missed her train once a week, then twice. Not always, she had a company to run, and I respected that. But regularly enough that I started bringing a third biscuit in my jacket pocket. She and Porter had an arrangement by February. He saved her the far end of the bench, and she brought him a small piece of the dry roll from her breakfast pastry, and he accepted it with the same gentleness he'd shown me that first Tuesday in October. We talked about ordinary things, mostly. The weather, town, what Owen was up to with his family. But sometimes we talked about Ruth, and about Martin, and about the strange mathematics of loss. How it doesn't get smaller exactly, but how life grows up around it if you let it, the way a tree will grow around a fence post. She said she hadn't talked about Martin to anyone in 2 years. Not really. She said she'd been afraid that if she stopped moving long enough to let it catch her, it would knock her flat. Has it? I asked her. She looked at Porter, who was watching a sparrow on the far rail with calm, unhurried attention. No, she said. It caught me, but I'm still here. I am not a man who says much when the right thing has already been said. So I just poured her the second cup, and she took it the way she always did now, without looking, without asking, the way you take something that has become quietly yours. Owen asked me one evening if I was going to keep feeding that dog forever. I said I supposed I would as long as he kept showing up. Owen laughed and told me I was the most stubborn man he knew. Maybe. But Ruth used to say that the most important things in life don't announce themselves. They just keep showing up, morning after morning, until you're finally still enough to notice them. Porter knew that. I'd learned it. And somewhere between a cold bench on platform 4 and a cup of coffee she never asked for, Claire was learning it too. Some mornings she doesn't make the 7:22, because there is nowhere else in the world she would rather be just then than on a green bench in the cold, with a golden dog's head in her lap and a cup of coffee going warm in her hands. I think Ruth would have liked her.